for your service. Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director, for your service. I want to talk to you about domestic terrorism, and I'd like for us to get a better understanding of how the statistics are evolving. I understand, it seems to me we're getting better at reporting sort of white nationalist, white extremist, both hate crimes and also terrorist events. And I'm wondering whether you think, A, do we have an increasing domestic terrorism problem related to white extremism or whatever word you would choose to use?
I think we assess that domestic terrorism, well, let me put the hate crime category to the side for a second, although you're exactly right that there's a lot of blurring between them, sometimes for good reason. But on the domestic terrorism side, what I would say is that we assess that domestic terrorism, including domestic terrorism conducted by people subscribing to some sort of white supremacist ideology, is a serious, persistent threat. I don't know that we've seen a noted increase in the threat, but it is make no mistake, it is a real serious threat, and it's persistent, and we have a lot of investigations, somewhere a little short of 1,000 that go to domestic terrorism, not just that particular type of domestic terrorism, but all domestic terrorism.
The question I have has to do with the allocation of resources, the way you organize your desks, the way agents are assigned, and I just want to be reassured that the resources are allocated according to the risk. And it seems to me that the way the Congress has appropriated money, the way the political ecosystem has evolved since 9/11, and for lots of very good reasons and sound reasons, that the focus has been on external threats, jihad-inspired terrorism, but to the extent that the data demonstrates that white nationalism is something approaching about half of the terrorist events, depending on whether you count individual instances or total number of deaths. Can I be confident that the way you organize your desks and the way you allocate resources are proportional to the data as it comes in? And if the data shows something new, that you can reallocate the resources?
Certainly, we have a whole threat review prioritization process that's designed to help us do the kind of calibration you're talking about. I would say that we very aggressively treat domestic terrorism as a priority through our joint terrorism task forces. And in fact, I think last year, just as one imperfect measure of it, I think we had more domestic terrorism arrests than we did international terrorism arrests. Now, in addition to what we do for the terrorism side, as you mentioned, there's the hate crime side, which we do through our criminal programs, and so there's a lot of times where some of the same kinds of activity can be tackled through the resources we use on that side too.
Thank you. Let me get to facial recognition. I think it's got lots of potential, but the GAO had a study that recommends that the director conduct tests and to take steps to determine whether systems used by external partners are valid. There was a recent study cited by the New York Times that says that women of color have an error rate of 35% increase in the error rate in terms of these facial recognition databases and softwares. And I'm sort of mixed mind here. I think this provides great potential for you to catch bad guys, but only if the software works. And I have two worries. First, if the software is not ready, that's one thing. Second, if you use third-party contractors and the algorithm is proprietary and you don't know how they're determining who's a risk and who's not, then I think the FBI has an obligation to take a breath and try to figure out how reliable this facial recognition software is. Can you speak to facial recognition generally and the worry that sort of garbage in, garbage out, that these approaches can enhance existing uneven enforcement of the law?
Well, with the caveat up front that I have not had the chance to review the newspaper article that you described or the GAO report that it summarizes, I would say that facial recognition, kind of like you, I view it as a very exciting technology with a lot of promise. I also view it as something that we have to approach thoughtfully to make sure that it's just like any exciting technology, it's not misused. You know, I sometimes say that with all the technology that's out there right now that's changing so fast, I usually have two reactions. Every time there's a new technology, I think, wow, we can do that? And then my second reaction is, oh no, somebody else can do that. And, you know, this is one of those tools that's in that regard. But I think there's a lot of promise to the technology in terms of what it can do to help solve crimes and keep people safe. And we'd be happy to, you know, arrange a briefing for you on a little more detail
I'll
on
do
the
that,
subject.
and in the interest of time, I'll reduce the follow-up to the record, but I do want to understand your response to both the New York Times article and the GAO report. Thank you.